Around for a number of years and part of PVRC and a number of other organizations. And we do love him dearly because of his experience, and we are surely squeezing him for everything that he knows. Mr. Budd, sir, your turn.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Well, I guess you can. Thank you much. I'll try to avoid giving the cameraman fits. I was going to wander freely. This is the first time I've been mic'd up mobilely. So thank you for coming and listening. Frostfest is a unique timing because it comes a couple of hours shy of 2 weeks following the January board meeting of the American Radio Relay League. So it's the first event that we have an ARRL forum at following the annual meeting of the board in January. Here you have 3 elected officials for the board. Dr. Joe as the section manager for Virginia. I'm the division director for the Carolinas, Virginia, and West Virginia. And the vice director, Bill Marine, who has been here often, is doing similar duties to what I'm doing here down in Charleston, South Carolina, with an unavoidable conflict of 2 events. I'm going to start with an overview of some of the action items from the board meeting 2 weeks ago, and primarily focus on those things that directly affect the members. First of all, I would like to point out that any membership association that increases dues temporarily loses some members, and that happened when the league raised its dues a few years ago to $49 a year. And in fact, as they had predicted and projected, the total number of members decreased, and that has been a factor in the statistics, the planning, the budgeting, and so forth. This year, the total membership did continue to decline slightly, but it declined less than was projected. And in fact, in the Roanoke division, it actually went up. And the Roanoke division, thank you all, was the second best division of the 15 divisions that make up the American Radio Relay League. So that's a really nice statistic to have that you guys are responsible for. So the board, at its meeting, handled a number of recommendations that had been made over the course of the past year, or even in some cases more than a year. And one of the things it did is it looked at the reduced rate for young members. This is in Bylaw 6 of the Articles of Association that govern the operation of the league. And it extended that youth rate. It has been, what it has been is up to the age of 22, and it's now up to the age of 26. So it's thrown 4 more years of a special youth rate for the younger members. The other thing it did related to that is it has introduced a digital subscription. Am I glowing yet? Am I radioactive? Whoops. It has introduced a digital subscription. If you do not want the print copy of QST as part of your subscription, you can eliminate it and you'll save some number of bucks. And I don't know that exact number. When the board acts as it did with this, it's then up to the headquarters staff to work out the numbers and come up with the actual different rate that will be there. This has to go and be reviewed by the Administration and Finance Committee, and they will meet in April for a final determination based on input from the headquarters staff. And so it's not going to happen until sometime after April, but the board has in fact authorized that. And my guess is that it's going to be roughly whatever the cost of printing that copy of QST, the incremental cost of printing that copy of QST each month, and the mailing cost. But that's going to be the approximate level of the discount on the membership. Now, related to that, one of the things that not everybody fully appreciates is that as a membership organization, the League has an official journal where all its official announcements appear. That journal is QST. It's not spread over multiple publications of the League. It is QST and QST alone. And all members are entitled to QST in one form or another as part of their membership. If you choose not to have the print copy of QST, you will receive the electronic version. So you will always have available to you in one form or another the official journal of the American Radio Relay League.
That way my wife won't throw it out.
Pardon?
That way my wife won't throw it away. And we don't have 600 pounds of book every time you move.
You don't want to see my basement. A new magazine, you may have heard this, a new magazine has been introduced, a periodical called On the Air. It's bi-monthly, and it's oriented at new hams, yet-to-be hams, new members, yet-to-be members. It's a small, in page count magazine at this point. I presume it will grow as it adds editorial pages, articles, and as it adds advertisers. And I'm not sure, we have seen copies of Volume 1, Edition 1 or Issue 1. I'm not sure when exactly it hits the streets formally. You will learn that when I learn that, okay?
But you can download it, look at it online and download it.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
digital.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
out now.
that's true, that's true.
Great. Thank you.
The board also voted, and there was, this is one of the questions that I've probably gotten most frequently standing up at forums and at the ARL booth in events the past year. The board will introduce a life membership for our, how do I phrase it, our more seasoned people. And at this go-around, it's for amateurs who are 70 years of age or older and who have had membership in the league for a cumulative total of 25 years. Doesn't have to be consecutive, but just throughout their hamming career, some 25 years of membership. And it's structured that way because that is the group. It's to be revenue neutral, okay? It can't cost the league money, but it should be attractive to you if you're in that age range of 70 to 108. And I know we have people 108 because I was in South Carolina a couple of months ago giving an award to one. So there's that group out there. If they've been members of the league a total of 25 years, there's a reduced rate life membership that's going to be available. And again, it takes headquarters staff time from the time the board approves something to actually implement it. Now, the rate is actuarially determined. Just life insurance companies set their premiums for you based on actuarial experience. They look around today at this group, and then they look around a year from now and see how many of you are still here. That's how they do that. Presumably, I would say that this is a membership option that's going to be fine-tuned as we go through the years of having real-life experience to go with the actuarial predictions. But this is something that's been requested a lot of times. At least I've gotten the request a whole bunch of times, and so we're glad to be able to put that out there. Another initiative that's been started with this board is improving its communications, the league's communications with its members. And a board committee was formed, and it has a nice short name, the Committee on Communications with ARRL Members. And it has looked at a number of initiatives to improve the contact with and communications with. And one of these is in response to a concern that's been expressed periodically that while the minutes of the board meetings are certainly officially correct, they're not very enlightening as to, say, the dialogue or the topics or the issues that went into a vote that was finally taken or a motion that was finally passed. And so this committee is looking at ways to rectify that situation, and they came to the board meeting with some discussion and some suggestions, and the board approved their proceeding with one possible way of doing this and expanding upon what you see in the official minutes, and that is to come back to the board as a test. As a test. You're not going to see the first test. The board gets to see the first test. And then it will decide from there. And there's nothing simple in life, and expanding upon the official minutes that are dictated pretty much by the way Robert's Rules of Order specifies and the way the league has adopted Robert's Rules of Order. There are certain legal considerations, and it's just not a super simple thing, but everybody is committed to providing more information about what goes into the actions of the board during a board meeting. The board also wants to look at possible changes to bylaw 25 to see if there's a way to allow member attendance at board meetings. And that too is complicated, and it's complicated by things like space available, fire safety regulations, the cost of a facility that's an appropriate size, that sort of thing. So the committee is looking at this. There's a definite desire to increase the visibility of what the board does and what the league does, and these things will unfold, but they unfold deliberately and making sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. The league has started a number of moderated discussion groups on topics. If you do Logbook of the World, for instance, you may be aware of that one. And there's a number been started, and there's a number more proposed to be started, and you'll be reading about those. The presumption is that the dialogue on them is not going to devolve into some of the dialogue I see when people go into two-way chatter behind news items on the internet. Ham radio has always held itself to a high standard, and my assumption is that the hams that get on these discussion groups to get more information will conduct themselves accordingly. I wouldn't expect it otherwise. And obviously, if that doesn't happen, things will have to be modified. The plans will have to be modified. But there's a bunch of these groups that are going to be up and running with people who have agreed, either headquarters staff people or board members who have agreed to act as the moderators for them and either answer the questions or see that the questions are routed to the right people at headquarters or in the field volunteer organization to help them with that. The January meeting is the annual meeting of the Board of Directors for the League. A lot of procedural stuff that goes on as well. Election of officers. Rick Roderick, president, was re-elected. As you've probably read, the board did not elect Howard Mickles CEO going forward, and it is named Barry Shelley interim CEO. Barry is the former chief financial officer of the league and has also served in the capacity of interim CEO previously. In conjunction with that, the board also created a CEO search committee. That search committee is diligently, actively, and time is of the essence, kind of proceeding towards obtaining candidates to present to the board in very short order. Other offices, First Vice President Greg Wyden, K0GW, who has been a guiding light behind the evolution and the improvements in Logbook of the World, has chosen to step down and retire after many years of service to the League and the board. He's going to continue on the Logbook of the World committee, but he's no longer First Vice President. And Mike Raisbeck, K1FWF, who's been the New England Division Vice Director for at least 20 years, is the new First Vice President. Bob Valio, W6RGG, out in the Pacific Division, continues as Second Vice President. And Rod Stafford, W6ROD, whom some of you may remember as a former ARRL President, has taken on the International Affairs Vice Presidency, replacing Jay Bellows, K0QB, who also chose to retire as of the January board meeting. And the League Treasurer, Rick Neiswander, K7GM, who is a neighbor to us just to the south, continues as Treasurer and is doing a fabulous job of that. And in January, the Executive Committee is elected, and the other committees of the board are named by the President at the end of the meeting. And you will see those published shortly on the ARRL website and in QST. The Ethics and Elections Committee brought to the board in January some items that had been of concern to both members and candidates in the last few elections. And these rules, they proposed changes to the rules to clarify some of the terms used for things like campaign materials, the campaign period, what is mass communication, and did a specific redefinition of the campaign period, which was kind of loosely identified in the bylaws previously. Also amended bylaw 20 to make it easier for a candidate for director to witness the ballot counting or to designate a representative or assistant. And the key thing there is that the candidate can come, or the assistant can come, or the representative, or both of them can come. If for instance, the candidate needs mobility assistance. So just trying to make things more visible, more open, more monitorable by everyone involved in the process. There's been changes to many of the committees, the standing committees, the ad hoc committees, and as I said, you will see those lists as the minutes get approved and as the stuff appears on the ARRL.org website. I received the first draft of the minutes Tuesday or Wednesday of this week, and made my markups, and they've gone back. And I'm hopeful that we might see the full minutes come out later this week. I'm hopeful. We'll see. Want to talk a little bit about regulatory issues. It's been my privilege to be on the executive committee of the board for this past year. And part of that has gotten me a couple of trips to the Federal Communications Commission in Washington. And we've had some very good dialogue with staffers and branch managers at the commission. And I would say my summation of the Washington scene is there's a lot going on and there's not a lot going on. And the problem is that, well, the problems are the impeachment process. That's got a lot of Washington sidetracked. The upcoming election year has got people's attention diverted. One thing that's not as well known is there's been a couple of retirements out of FCC at the end of 2019. And so a couple of people who have been either in very key positions with respect to amateur radio regulation and or good friends of amateur radio are leaving the commission. Scott Stone headed the wireless telecommunications branch, the branch responsible for amateur radio, and he's gone. He's retired. Julius Knapp, long-term FCC employee, not directly involved with amateur stuff, but certainly very knowledgeable, very, very helpful to us, and he's finally retired. So these things are going on. One thing I do want to report, we heard this from more than one person at the FCC, they are suffering from a lack, a dearth of RF engineers. They're hard to find. And you know, it's kind of interesting to me, there are electrical engineering schools all over the place, this country and other countries. We're turning out BSEEs and higher by the ton. And unfortunately, relatively small percentage of them are pursuing RF careers. So if you know anyone that's recent graduate, the FCC, in fact, has a special program they've just announced for people who are within, say, a year of having graduated as a BSEE that want to go into basically, I don't want to say an intern position, but say a provisional kind of position, particularly with respect to RF kinds of stuff. There's opportunities there, and certainly a career as an electronics engineer with a specialty in RF is just a wonderful career, whether it's in the government or in the private sector. So if you know anyone, point that out to them. They truly are looking to shore up their ranks because many of the people that they've had in their ranks that provided the RF experience over the years have retired. That's simple. As a result of all the things going on in Washington, and as a result probably of the retirements of some key people, stuff that has been on track going through the FCC has as best we can tell, slowed down. We don't know, and won't know until the FCC decides to act, but my assumption, based on everything I've heard and seen, is that you're not going to go home from this and discover that they've enacted anything. Related to that the league's, the board's high-frequency band planning committee came to the board with a report as a result of discussions during the board meeting. That report has been fine-tuned, tweaked, and is about to be released for viewing. And it's being done so with the following statement, that we're looking for member input, but the response time, the suspense time is going to be short. And the member input should come to your director. And from there, those reports will go to the band planning committee for consolidation and for evaluation and subsequent additional adjustment of the recommendation. And the band planning attempts to tackle with fairness to all operating groups in amateur radio issues of traditional modes, digital modes, automatic controlled digital stations, phone, teletype, FT8, FT4, FT722, any of the modes that you happen to like. Digital spectrum, digital preferred spectrum, let me call it that, is being increased. There's some suggestions for realignment of some of the subbands. But again, it'll all be out there. It's far too, there's too many bands and too many items for me to go into it here in any detail. But when it comes out, understand you're only going to have a couple of weeks to respond if you wish to make a comment. And you can find my email address in QST. I'll give you a business card, or you can remember W2RU at ARRL.org. Okay? Any of those are going to work. Put it in writing. I don't want to hear it on the telephone, because I may misinterpret what you tell me when I take notes. I need it in some form of writing. But you will be invited to speak to that issue. I've been an amateur since I was 13. I've been in a whole bunch of different aspects of amateur radio. I've enjoyed virtually all of them, and clearly I've enjoyed some more than others because of where I've tended to concentrate my time over that period. I'd like to tell you that period is only 10 or 15 years, but it's a lot longer than that, believe me. So, I got to tell you a story. Quick story. On weekends, we have our grandson, one of our grandsons spends his weekends with us because his parents work retail. They have their days off during the week. 2 years ago, about a week and a half from now, it's my birthday coming up. I had my birthday on a Saturday, and the next day, we went to church. But during my birthday, Asher came up to me and he said, "Papa, how old are you?" Well, I'm old enough to know when a 4-year-old asks you a question like that, you better think about what your answer is going to be. So I thought for a couple seconds and I said, 39. And Asher said, okay. So the next day at church, we haul into church, and we normally sit near the back. And up near the front, our pastor was wandering around greeting people, and Asher saw him. Asher went running down the aisle, the whole length of the aisle at full tilt. Pastor Bill, guess what? Papa had a birthday yesterday, and he's only 39! So, anyway,
Miracles.
I've enjoyed many, many different aspects of amateur radio. And just because I don't practice all of them today doesn't mean I don't enjoy them or don't want to. I used to build gear until 1 or 2 in the morning. I used to work on my mobile setup. I even do teletype from time to time, and I might even do FT 4, 8, 12, what is it this week? The point is, there's a whole bunch of us with a whole bunch of different activities. It is a hobby with so many sub-hobbies in it. I cannot imagine how anyone who's at all interested in ham radio can ever be bored. The thing I want you to remember is you don't need a ham license to build a keyer with an Arduino chip. You don't need a ham license to go string some antennas and listen to the world on your receiver. You do need a ham license to transmit, to put out RF on the air. And that's the thing that sets us apart. That's the thing that allows us to be communicators and gives us a privileged role when it comes to working with the organizations that we either work with or work for, whether it's FEMA, our local emergency agency in our local town or county, whether it's Saturn or Red Cross or any of them. It's because we have a ham license and we get on the air and we know how to operate. We know what the propagation is on 2 meters versus what it is on 20 meters or 160 meters. That's our stock and trade. That's our skill set, and we should do as individuals and collectively as clubs or other individuals coming together. That's what we should do to boost ourselves and to boost our reputation with the people that surround us. So, any questions? I've deliberately not